So just to kick things off, and don't want to keep this discussion way too long, keep it brief as possible. So the first sort of thing that we would like to talk about is there's an assumption that tech alone will solve all the problems, and it's just, at the end of the day, just a tool. The issue is human behavior, and it can't be changed easily. So what basically, once again from a tech point of view, right, at the end of the day, Donald Trump became the most powerful person in the world using Facebook and really simple tech, right? I mean, it's just a joke for all you techies here, the kind of tools he used to do that, right? So at the end of the day, if you can influence, what, 300 million people, is that the number in the US? Or at least 50% of that to vote for you and become, you know, become the president of the United States, not some unknown country in part of the world. So how do you think tech could influence people to become more sustainable? Because at the end of the day, we can talk about all this cool tech, you know, but if people's mentalities don't change, we can just pack it on one of the Falcon Heavies and send it to Mars. Doesn't make any sense because it's the people who are at the core. So anyone with some interesting ideas, or who would like to go first?
I can at least comment on the Trump issue first, because I don't think technology is to blame for Trump. I have to say I have to give him credit for being smart enough to use the data and use it in a smart enough way that, for instance, he never visited California. California is won by the Democrats and has been won by the Democrats for 60 or 70 years of running. He never even ever spent a second on California. He used the data smart, so he visited the states where they could change the tone of the people there. So you can say a lot of things about Trump. I don't like him as much as well, but if it was his people, if it was him, he used the data to a good way in order for him to win. So I have to give him credit for that. On a side note, the technology he used comes from my company, Cambridge Analytica, which is the company that helped them gather data from Facebook. They utilize the open source version of our data integration and machine learning platform, Pentaho. So that's the free version of what Hitachi is bringing to the market. So it's powerful, yes, but technology can be used for the wrong hands as well. It's never technology that's the issue, it's humans.
Now you know who to get right at the end of the event.
My take on this is that technology is fundamentally dependent on human behavior. When technology is made available for people, they start using it. And as we have seen more than anything on the mobile phone technology, and when that power is placed in the power of people, they can both influence other and be influenced as there is an access to them. So to start embracing opportunities that technologies gives you without having the access to the end user, so to speak, is extremely hard and extremely costly. My second take on this is that somehow this goes not directly to human opinions or changed attitude. It sort of comes through the changes in human culture. Culture sort of eats strategy for breakfast is a known saying, and that makes a lot of sense. It's the attitude, and that's what I mentioned in my keynote, that 2019 was most likely a tipping point in the development of broad understanding of the necessity of really taking climate change seriously, not only as a political issue, but as an issue for businesses in general. So that's a cultural political change, and that's when that context is there, then the ability to have tech being used intelligently and with a large effect is obviously there.
Often in behavioral change, a lot of science says that it's not actually the attitude that changes first. It's usually the actions, and then the attitude comes along with that. So it's important to facilitate or ensure good facilitating conditions so it's easy to make sustainable choices and use nudging, for instance. Norgesgruppen, they wanted to nudge people to buy more fruits and vegetables. So they mapped like behavioral patterns, and they found out that they should have fruits and vegetables at the beginning of the store. When you first walk into the store, you should see a lot of fruits and vegetables. In municipalities where people didn't have high education, the amount of fruits and vegetables people started buying increased enormously. So then people are like, okay, this looks good, I will buy that. And maybe later they tell themselves, okay, I'm a person that buys fruits and vegetables. And then they continue doing that.
Yeah, and I'm sort of a runner-up here from Empower, but from our perspective also, I think also the trust and transparency is perhaps the biggest issue for us that we really see the demand for, and that's technology and mobile devices, and what we see as a leapfrog in technology so many places enables more data points, and in that way, for us, when we are incentivizing collection of plastic waste, we are able to add that transparency and trust that has not been there before, and for that, technology is a driving force. So it's an enabler for that, in our case at least.
Well, yeah. Anybody else to add on to that? Okay. Well, I think the next question is pretty interesting. It's both sort of brings you into perspective as well, what you were talking about, reusing products for automotive, for example, and it's something that Gateway is also very much involved in, because today one of the biggest challenges is specifically when you're looking at machinery, how much of, if there's a slight defect on a specific instrument or a part, it just has to be discarded. And there's a very strong culture, especially in Norway, for someone like me coming from Sri Lanka, where we have a repair culture. TVs are much more expensive in our currency, so we can't just go buy another TV, right? And so, but when I came here, it was just completely shocking for me. Just throw away TVs and, really expensive stuff, right? And so it's also culturally driven, specifically from my point of view as well. And also, just want to put it to you. I mean, how do you think we could create a sort of an environment where these things could be reused and incentivize it in such a way so that people are, because it's cheaper here to buy a TV than to fix it, right? Or a certain part of a car, like a disc brake that you were talking about. And how do you think, there's not a tech question, but of course, could there be a tech point of view as well, or generally from a business point of view, how to encourage this both within the public as well as the organizations?
First of all, I have to agree with that actions are extremely important. It's not enough with accessibility. Somebody has to lead, somebody has to take the initiative. But the power of that is, of course, important on how information can flow. When it comes to return and reuse, I think the Norwegian Panteordning is a phenomenal history about how we have in the gold section of consumer goods created a system where we incentivize reuse, and it's a leading star for the rest of the world. And in that case, smart technology has been devised and developed and continuously developed and when that actually nicely goes together with the giveaways to organizations as well, then the circle is fully exposed. So that's I think that's a start to follow in all parts of industries and consumer goods to create panteordninger and then organize technology around it.
EU is really concerned about circular economy. So it's going to come a lot of legislation related to circular economy. So a lot of companies will be more or less forced to think in that ways, which is really good. They've been working on circular economy for quite some years now, and they're getting their ambitions up. And the Pante system, a take-back system, is a good business model for circular economy, and also seeing a product as a service is one way of thinking about circular economy. For instance, Philips, they stopped seeing light bulbs as a product. They started seeing it as a service. So, and they see the whole lamp. Like if certain parts are broken, they need to fix it. So it's actually a good thing for them if they deliver quality, because then they don't need to fix things all the time, and then they have loyal customers. So I think we will see a lot of those kind of business models in the future. And also Nabobil is a good example of sharing economy. Airbnb, Fjong is a good example. So in Fjong, like, address is not a product anymore, it's a service. So you don't have to spend 4,000 on a new dress, you can rent it for 500. So yeah, I think we will see a lot of those kind of business models in the future.
Yeah, definitely, and I totally agree. I think it's also the balance between legislation and how the EU is definitely working a lot on this producer manufacturer responsibilities, and we already also see this actually in other parts of the world. And just in India, for instance, they are much ahead of us. So that's our experience, and we have been there and also working with different parts when companies there are already committed to use and have their extended producer responsibility. So they are committed to using a certain percentage of recycled plastics in new products, for instance, and how they also spend their annual budgets on also environmental issues. So we will see a lot more of that coming. But what's interesting in the meantime, I think, is also that companies have to sort of push also, because it's coming one way or the other. So it's how you can think of deposit systems or a Pante system, and companies like Swedish Match, which are producing snus boxes. It's like one interesting example of how we have done this pilot now here in Norway. So where we help on the technology, so people can deliver Pante boxes here in Oslo S and in I think 5-6 locations now in Norway, but also in Sweden when they want to experiment and see what kind of behavior change when people hand in the snus box and they can see that it somehow has a value. They are not allowed to actually give money when you deliver it, but they fund cleanup of plastic waste through either Wholesale or Empower globally, for instance. So how can you experiment with giving something a value so people can think otherwise, like they receive a reward? It's really interesting.
Yeah, and I'm actually touching on that point as well. I think it's the age of enlightenment, if you want. As we gain more and more knowledge, we want to change. From a personal point of view, that's what happened to me. 2 years ago, I had ham and cheese on my bread every day. I eat meat for dinner every day. I had meat all the time. It was my own education, knowing what happened to the animal, the process of it, what it done to it, the crops it was taking up compared to what was possible with just plant-based foods. That started me on a journey of wanting to stop eating any kind of animal products in the future. Currently vegetarian, but I want to go more vegan, so cut out milk at least. And it would be the same for my interest when I bought my first electrical car and wanted to have more renewable energy. In the beginning, I didn't know what oil did to our environment. I didn't. I wasn't even a smoker. I didn't know that what smoke did to my body. It's all about what marketing people has been telling us over and over and over and over again. Maybe we shouldn't believe all the marketing. Maybe we should start asking questions for ourselves and asking more credible sources. What is really going on with our planet, our own health, etc., and make better choices. It's getting information to the people when they need it.
Thank you. The next question is, well, it's sort of the big picture, because there's a lot of, there's all these interesting sustainability goals and a lot of technology and so on and so forth. But obviously, you as business people and a lot of people here running organizations know there's funding that's needed. And so what type of a new business model could we have? Because we see capitalism, as we just spoke right now, is just raped our world, right? And it worked back in the 1900s and so on and so forth, but it's just not working out. I mean, we have been marketed, like as Kim just mentioned, all the bad things. I mean, for example, I personally believe marketing a fashion accessory should be banned like marketing a cigarette, because it's just touching your ego, right? It's not actually being, solving a problem. And so we see the practices are sort of self-generating. So because the marketing is pushed to do marketing to sell their products more and more, dump it onto our face, and then that's happening, this overproduction and so on and so forth. So the economical system itself is sort of a virus, right? So how could we, or at least what are your point of views on how could we change this economical system? I mean, if you can elaborate on that.
It's a bit of a political question. As far as my knowledge serves me right, I think it started in around the 1800s or so. I don't know who started it or what, but it became the countries itself that said that we should have a goal of 1, 2, 3% growth. And that links back into the businesses. We should have 1, 2, 3% growth. This is something that's ingrained into every one of us as we are in a culture today. We need to have a growth in everything we do. Growth is the key thing. If you ask a CEO at the World Economic Forum, what's your key thing? It's growth, and then it's profit, and then do good further down the list. It's the economic system is what fuels us, what gathers us, and if we can change it in some way, it needs to come back into hopefully what I said about becoming vegetarian, becoming an advocate for electrical cars, green power, etc., as a more sustainable future. We need to have more people understanding and being enlightened about what capitalism does to us. And I don't think throwing away capitalism 100% is the correct way either, because capitalism has brought us great advancements. Now you can be pro-tech or not if you want, and you can want to live in a Amish community if you want. Perhaps for some people like that. I like technology, and I want it there. And capitalism has brought me a lot of those things that I like. But how can we still be a fan of what innovation and capitalism gives us, and how can we change that system for something better? I don't know. That's a tough one.
Yeah, it's a big question. But I had a lecturer called Tim Jackson. He wrote a book called The Prosperity Without Growth. And I don't think anyone has a good system that is not capitalism. It's just like capitalism is the least bad system, maybe. I don't know. But at least we should stop only thinking about growth. We need to measure on other parameters as well, because today it's all about growth. I did a bachelor at BI, and I had a lot of courses in economics, and the only thing we learned about was growth. Growth in everything. And then I studied ecological economics, and we need to ask ourselves, like, what do we actually want in this world? Is it human rights? Is it good health? What is it? And then find the economic system. But it's difficult. I don't think we have the answers. But we can at least measure other things than only economic growth, like happiness, how many people are attending school, and such parameters. Yeah.
I think we have some of the answers in the kind of political and economic systems that's developed in the Nordics, in the sense that there is capitalism there, but there is also a strong state that also puts into the frameworks of businesses all the parameters that has to be followed, and there is fundamentally no limit to how far those frameworks can be set, and they are changing rapidly just now, introducing new goals, new values, new systems that businesses has to adapt to. So I think we are in a pretty good place in this world where we combine a strong state with capitalism, the way we manage it around here. So that's I think that's an important lesson. I think lots of the other parts of the world are quite envious on the kind of model we have.
Yeah, and I guess a last point, again for us, in the perspectives that we have been learning, I mean, I think it's kind of a journey, at least in the sense of what we are moving towards in terms of circular economies, and how that will sort of, like I say, on the high level, I think it's hard to know the answers, but at least on sort of on the ground, it's really experimenting with what kind of sustainable business models can we build that will also serve the planet, to put it in a simple way. And I think that journey that we are sort of discovering the models now for, like, how can we actually make it more attractive to recycle the products instead of buying new ones? How can we attract better models, and how can we kickstart it? And that's sort of been our philosophy, at least. And like you say, with the idea of the Pante system, that's sort of, okay, it's not possible to do that and make that economically sustainable from day one everywhere. But what if we can kickstart it and demonstrate the model, and then we are building new value chains that can sort of turn the wheel, and then we build cases that other can learn from and thrive from.
Yeah, I think, sorry.
And also part of the SDGs is that we need to support less developed countries to get to a higher level of development, because we can't let them go through all the steps that we've been through. They need to jump over a few of those steps if we are to become sustainable.
Right. I think we more or less got one of the answers, not the whole thing, but one of the answers when Ellen was speaking about the education system. That need to change, because she was talking about, she studied environmental stuff and economics, and everything just spoke about growth. So we need to, there was an interesting TED talk that I was just watching. It was about winning, and the most winning coach in the United States, and she said the price that people pay for winning. And most of these people who we celebrate as champions and winners, they're extremely miserable, most of them are. And because they sacrifice everything in their life, their health, their psychology, their family, everything for the sake of winning. And I think it's, once again, talking about Ellen, it's important that our education system at the core starts giving value, even when we are little children. And there's also an interesting study which talking about consumerism. One of the interesting things was what Kim posted on LinkedIn, and I reposted, and I got a lot of comments on that from Tina. Was how Tina is thinking of putting down 150 of their dairy farms, and because they, despite having, Tina is known to be a very sustainable, or the most sustainable, one of the top leaders up there. A lot of money and a lot of technology and so on. Yet they couldn't predict what was happening with their potential target market. So they got caught up in their situation. And so it's not just about technology to make better products or recycle, but it's also to predict human behavior. And I think that's coming back to the topic we're talking about. There's an interesting question here from Nasi from Oracle. He said, a flat earther decided to prove that the earth is flat, tied himself to a rocket and shot up and died.
It's not a joke, it happened 2-3 days ago, by the way.
Yeah, I know, this happened, right. And how do we convince the masses science isn't enough, obviously, and changing the system becomes difficult when the attitude ignores knowledge itself?
I would definitely link it back to education again. I don't remember who said it or where I read it, but it kind of stuck with me, and I'm a firm believer of it. They said that to solve world peace and world hunger, we need to have education for everyone. And by that I mean you empower people to take your own choices. For instance, if you go to ISIS and you see their schools from kids that are 5, 6, 7 years old, they are taught to hate the Western world. Children are not born to hate anyone. They are being taught. It's culture, it's education. If we can change our perception, we can make sure that everybody has access to all the same kind of information, the same kind of education, then we can change the perception of everyone. Then the second part of that is to have trust in education, because what the person who died, I'd commend him for his pioneering spirit and building a rocket. I think it cost like $14,000 and being shot up into space. He actually did it once earlier and it was successful, a little bit lower altitude, and he landed in the parachute. I won't recommend anyone else to do it, but he has a certain pioneering spirit of wanting to find his own truth. And I actually hope, when I read about it and I saw the documentary on Netflix, I actually hoped he would succeed. I hoped he would succeed in shooting himself up in a rocket and seeing that the Earth actually has curvature. I believe in science. I think I'm one of my used hashtags when I do posters that is trust science, trust engineering. Where would this be without science and engineers? And if we can get people to trust science and trust the consensus of science, because there's a lot of mumbo jumbo science out there. So when you're discussing climate change, for instance, you'll always find somebody who says that, well, I have this climate scientist who says that this isn't real, this isn't happening, and blah, 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 blah. Well, that's all fair and square, but the goal is to have a consensus of all of the different research papers being posted and peer-reviewed as well. That's when you can see the consensus is 93% certain that this climate change is man-made. Now, then I believe it, but how can we get the masses to believe that if they don't want to believe it? Now, that's even harder. Trust science.
Yeah, science is of course really important, but I also think how we communicate all these issues are really important. I saw this An Inconvenient Truth when I was about 15, 16, with Al Gore explaining about climate change, and I was shocked. I hadn't heard about climate change before, and it was so big, and I saw like the world is like going to hell. There's no solutions. So after I saw that movie or documentary, I just froze. I couldn't do anything. So it took me several years before I actually started doing something. So I think it's important to show solutions, and that's also like what the science says as well, that we need to show solutions, not only paint this picture of like all the challenges. We need to show solutions. It's so important, and see that we can actually make changes as individuals in this community, because the SDGs and the environmental crisis needs local solutions. We can't just push it to China, and yeah, we need to do this, everyone.
Yeah, and just last thought, building on this, I guess, is that on the knowledge, on the education, I think it's hard to forget all of the small steps that are moving in the right direction, and that like every little push actually has an effect, and it's truly sort of inspirational. I think, at least when you're going into this space, that once you get a new opportunity to tell people or to cooperate with partners that can bring a message forward, and that's, to me at least, the most inspiring with the digital age as well, that I think we sometimes tend to forget how the obvious possibilities are right in front of us. And for us, for instance, when we are able to connect just through Facebook or anything, that people are wanting to do something about the problem. So for instance, in Tanzania, where we had like a cleanup organization that contacted us, they needed help to incentivize some of the cleanup, and we still have like early partner and pilot project there, so it's like really early phase. But like you mentioned on the BI, you know, lectures and all of that, it's really things that are happening now. So I mean, BI reached out to us because we are having this pilot project in Tanzania, and they want to learn about new ways of circular economy or climate. So they were actually in Tanzania, the Norwegian BI professor meeting with this partner we had connected randomly, kind of via internet, and they are now doing new projects together. And it's all because of, you know, initiatives on different sides of the planet. So to me, that's inspiring at least. But yeah, so we have to also take the small victories, I guess.
And just commenting on that one, so I totally agree with you. We need to have more of the good stories out there. News today, I dropped watching the news. It's, for me, that's just a sad story. I don't watch the news anymore. I read them and I select the stories that I want to read. Watching the news is horrible. Then if you only watch that, then you're going to be scared, like my mom. So how many here have heard about the Gapminder Foundation? That's good. How many have heard about Hans Rosling and Factfulness? Even better. So Hans Rosling was the founder of the Gapminder Foundation, and he's dead now. He was a brilliant guy. If you ever watch TED Talks, he's one of the most viewed one there ever. He is a brilliant advocate for getting those good stories out into the world. So if you haven't read Factfulness, I applaud those of you who done, do it. Bill Gates said it very well. Bill Gates bought Factfulness and said for each and every student going out of universities or high schools in the US, I think it was last year, gets a free copy of Factfulness, courtesy of his, he paid for it. Because he wanted the truth to come out, the facts to come out. And that's advocating for the good stories. That's important.
Right. I think we need to round up, so I just leave it with one last question, because this conversation can go on and on and on. Yeah. One of the hypotheses that I just wanted to sort of bring onto the table was the fact that, okay, let's look at a fishing farm. I mean, I'm from Sri Lanka, so they're like little fishermen who have this, a fishing village, who have sort of little boats. Okay, so there's one fishing village with about 500 boats. What if we replace, of course this is dangerous, the chances of you dying at work is 50%, getting eaten by a shark, thrown into the water, you know, rough waves and so on. So what if we replace those 500 with 5 trawlers, right? That's equally the same amount of work. And ask the people, okay, you just need to work one day of the week, or maybe every other week, you know, so you get the same amount of fish, you know, that you can sell and continue with your life and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Use the rest of the time that you have to develop your country or your land, or educate yourself to become data scientists, or, you know, environmentalists, or so on and so forth. And what if, for example, we could have a large corporation like Hitachi say, okay, we'll fund the 500 trawlers. One of the trawlers, of the 5 trawlers, okay, let's do 6. One of that comes back to us to pay our loans and so on and so forth. So, what could we have this type of, or could we have as large, you know, a few people are left here, but they're still on the stream, but a couple of large organizations with a lot of wealth, could they actually be the change agent? And then what would be sort of the hurdles of achieving this type of change, rethinking economy and, yeah, how business happens?
I'd go back to, so right now I'm reading Homo Sapiens by Yuval Harari, learning a little bit more about how we changed from hunter-gatherers into farmers, and then from farmers and the Industrial Revolution and to where we are today. Now, did that make us happier? Yuval Harari argues that and says that I'm not sure. We have more time to do other stuff than gathering food and preparing food and etc. There's one study that showed, just here, for instance, in Norway, if you go back to the 60s, a family spent in average about 3 hours every day preparing a meal, eating a meal together as a family. Today, that amount of time has shrunk to like 30-40 minutes. Now, that's quality family time, if you ask me. That's being lost. I'm not saying I would change my life for being a fisherman in Sri Lanka. I'm just saying that this is it's a huge social experiment what we're part of. I'm happy where I am. I might not be happy as a fisherman in Sri Lanka. I've many times thought about quitting the entire ecosystem that we're part of and just being a happy sailor on a sailboat around the ocean. I don't know, but it's a big question. It's a philosophy question. It's so much more.
Although it's a lot of technology, so suppose it's more easy life now. So
correct. It's an easier life, and we have more time to do stuff. We can innovate more. We can prosper more, etc.
Family, short society, that's
But are we happier? That's I'm not sure.
suppose the technology it gives you more easy life to have time to have, and it's not like that. So why?
Yeah. This book again, Prosperity Without Growth, claims that when you come to a certain point of income, your happiness doesn't increase. So it's a limit to how much money you have and how happy you are. So it's a balance, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess it's like a huge topic in the end of the night, but it's definitely. I mean, what we also see, it's definitely one aspect of technology, but another, I guess, is job creation and referring to Hans Rosling and sort of the expected growth rate in the global sphere, and I think we need to sort of take into account that we need hands and meaningful work. So technology can't solve everything there. We need to have a plan for it as well. But yeah, it's I guess it's a big topic.
I can say to you though, I do believe that we should skip some things. We should analyze what has been happening in the development of the countries and the Western world in particular, and see what kind of skips in technology we can do to ensure we have a more sustainable journey. And that is being down again to data analytics and data scientists and scientists going down and finding what can we eliminate and what should we eliminate. But then it becomes a philosophical question after that: what is happiness?
Definitely. Thank you very much. I think, as I said, we could go on this topic on and on, but we hope to have this set of events through 2020, and we want everyone to join in this discussion, and not just join in this discussion. We want to actually make change. So support Media Monday. Please follow us and be part of the whole conversation, because we really are here to make change, and we finally have the tools for the first time in history to actually make change. We have the tools. Like the $6 million man, gentlemen, we have the technology, right? So let's do something about it. Let's destroy this Death Star, let's just make this world, a better place to live all over again. So thank you very much, everyone. And
luckily we have, so the old Iron Man was me and Narji's old boss, Larry Ellison. He's been demoted. The new Iron Man is Elon Musk, and he wants to make the world a better place.
Exactly, and one thing that I want to leave you, talking about Elon Musk, if you are struggling right now to understand what's happening around you, you have no choice but to be a fan of science fiction. Because if you look at Elon Musk himself, in his philosophy, everything is based on science fiction. So everything is based on amazing things, how things should be. Because today, for once, we have the possibility to have levitation, to fly out of space, to do amazing things that we could hardly imagine. And the only thing today stopping us is not technology. You know what it is. It's your imagination. It's human ingenuity. We lack the imagination. So when you look at people like Elon Musk, Jobs, you see what crazy imaginations they have. So if you of course, to tap into this realm, as I say, very simple. Isaac Asimov, lots of sci-fi writers, look into this, see everything that you can grab hold of in regards to sci-fi, and then you will see, at least you will get an understanding of what is out there, how systems are solved. Yes?
The Foundation trilogy will actually support what Kim has been saying, by the way. So I recommend strongly you read it because it's not only technology, but who has the power. That's what he's explaining in the foundation technology. I recommend it.
Thank you very much. And also another one note I want to leave you with. There's a documentary called The Minimalist. Has anyone heard of this? Yeah? I would strongly suggest that you watch this HBO documentary. Thank you very much. Have a lovely evening.